Help them find locations. I'm sure they would work with you.
Yeah, and in this COVID time, it's really hard. My church here on the island has been a voting center for a long time, but this year we almost weren't because of all of the sanitation requirements and so on because of COVID. So it was very difficult for us to have the voting center.
What is she doing? Sorry. It was a wonderful discussion. Thank you.
Yes, there we go. That was all planned. It was planned to have a discussion on voting updates at, yes. I knew that Anne had sent me a message earlier in the week that she might be out, but I didn't see anything, an update that I was actually supposed to do it. So I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing right now. So, hey.
Hi there, I think we're good.
Okay, we're doing great. So we're talking about election updates. Is there anything else that we need to do before Stephanie's supposed to come on at noon, right?
Yeah, she'll be on at noon. She's if y'all read The Voter, and I hope you did.
Yes.
She's a mother, and so she's in the middle of school with them right now, so she's going to jump on at noon. And she had a meeting with the Texas League this morning. She said she was going to be able to give us updates, so that's really good news. Yeah, and I just wanted to remind everyone that if you didn't get The Voter, Sandra sent them out, and she and Adele sent out the Zoom links, and they've been doing a great job at that. So I wanted to thank them too. It's the end of the year. Thank you all. And also, I don't want to leave this out. The Voter is published on our website, and I think it went through social media. So they are so informative. I'm really proud to be a part of this organization because we're so seeking information and correct information, and that it's like a magazine, The Voter. What do y'all think about that? I enjoy every edition of it.
Yeah, and that was something that I was pondering, like how many people actually go through The Voter and read it. So yes, people, give a nod if you read your Voter. Oh, okay, excellent, good. And feel free to pass it along to people who you think might be interested in joining the league. It's something that we do. One of the little, Catherine, would you like to unmute yourself and chat?
Okay, I'm unmuted. I'm changing the subject. Is that okay?
You bet.
Okay, just a really brief update. We were requested by LWV.
Can't hear you.
Okay, you can't.
I can't hear you.
There you go. Better.
Let me bring it up. Raise my volume here. We were asked by LWV-US to complete a semi-annual survey. And this is the first time that we've ever been asked to do that. And this is part of LWV-US's strategic framework for 2020-2024.
A new president, you know?
Right. And so one of the things, and you've touched on some of these things, but there were, they wanted to collect data about our progress in 4 areas, and that's increasing voter access and participation, which you've talked about briefly here this morning, strengthening the league's operational capacity, being a growing equitable and inclusively community, and growing the league's advocacy and activism. So there, again, as the name implies, a semi-annual. We will have to be doing this twice a year. One of the things, and I'll do a fuller report for you in the next Voter to kind of do the compilation that we had and things that we discovered in the process of completing this survey.
It was a big one. It was a lot of questions.
Yeah, there were. And just an FYI, it had 6 sections, information about our league, the 2020 election season, including every details of them. But we didn't do this, but there was also a section for the state leagues only about the 2021 legislative priorities, communications, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a survey feedback. And so they are going to compile that, and early next year, 2021, they will be sending out the results of that. So anyway, there, as those of you who were very gracious and participated in the call to submit information, there are some tracking things that we might want to look into as we move forward in order to make it easier to complete the next semi-annual survey sometime next year. So anyway, I just wanted you to get a heads up on that and let you know that this is something brand new. They've not done this before, and we, now that it's on our radar, there are things we can do, put in place in order to be a part of that process. Thanks, that's it.
Okay, and kind of following up on that, in case you want to stay active, I put a little blurb into the voter about this, but you know, staying involved in the days of COVID, the LWV-TX, the state league, has their priority issues and things that are important to them. So they've outlined those. So they're also cooperating with a number of other agencies that are pushing legislation, or, you know, supporting voters in all of these areas. So something to check out. They all, you know, everybody holds Zoom meetings now. So I've gone to a couple put on by the Texas Civil Rights League, and, you know, there's just numerous organizations. So plenty of ways to stay involved. To get out and about.
Right.
So,
do you want me to give an update on the programs?
yes, please do.
Okay, that's great. I kind of piggyback on the League of Women Voters Texas. We've been blessed these past few months. The Lead and Water Study Committee and I have been working with some of our leaders at the state level, and they're helping us to move the lead and drinking water study through consensus. That's a process that we're all learning and looking forward to. We've got some mentors, though, among us who are able to help us, so we're lucky for that. But I just wanted to give you an update on that. Our President Ann approved the committee's facts and issues, which is an important part of the process. And the committee, they've taken their facts and issues and they've created a PowerPoint. It's absolutely wonderful. They call it Blue Bubbles. It condenses a very, very wonderful but dense study, which if you like facts, you can dig into, but this will give you a really good understanding on the facts and issues of the lead and water here in Corpus Christi. They are going to be presenting for us in January 21st meeting. They're going to show that Blue Bubbles workshop, which is going to be very helpful. And we're going to do it in the day, and we're going to do it at night as well at 6. So we'll have them present at noon on January 21st and at 6 on January 21st. Now, we've also been lucky because those meetings are often recorded and published as well, and you can look at them. The reason we're having 2 of them is because we want you to be able to participate in a question and answer session with the committee. So that's January 21st. Then on February 18th, this Corpus Christi Water Utilities Department is coming to give us an update at our meeting. So that's very, very good. We're going to have Gabe Ramirez, the Assistant Director of Water Quality and Treatment, and Crystal Ibanez, who's the Water Quality Manager. There's been quite a bit of improvement in the Water Utilities Department since the study started. So we want to get an update on that, and we want you to be able to also have the opportunity to do a question and answer session with them, so that when we get to the last part of the consensus process, which is us meeting together and coming to a consensus, you can make an informed decision and we can come to a consensus together. So that consensus process will happen on March 18th. And then we might come to a position or we might not. So that's a brief glimpse of moving the lead and drinking water study through consensus to action. And then I want to tell you that we've already got March, let's see, we've got April, We've got April scheduled, and that we're going to focus on voting rights because there's lots of things happening in the legislature this year. And that's why we're going to have Stephanie on redistricting. In April, we're going to have Joaquin Gonzalez. He is with the Texas Civil Rights Project. And he's going to update us on voting rights and what's happening in the legislative session. And then in May, Debbie doesn't know this yet, but she helped make it happen. I'm real excited about this. We're going to have the political science professor from Texas A&M. And Debbie, if you know how to pronounce her name correctly, maybe you could help me out with that. Is it Rickoff? Sane Rickoff?
I think so, but I have to double check that. Debbie reached out to her because
of League of Women Voters meeting.
Debbie reached out to her because we want to make sure that we're concerned about the proliferation of mis and disinformation and its effects on our democracy. So we want to know how to responsibly consume media and have others do that. We've done a great job of it as an organization, but we need to keep spreading the seed. So she's going to come and talk to us about that. So that gets us up to May for our programs. Any questions?
All right, I'll just piggyback something else on top of that. So you all know that with this this pandemic that we're enjoying, the League of Women Voters, we had no ways to meet virtually. So we did the thing and rewrote our, made additions to our bylaws that we then we voted on at our yearly meeting, our annual meeting, and and we got on the ballot and we faced the problem. So now we're going into the legislative session, and of course the legislature has no provisions for meeting via Zoom, holding hearings via Zoom, none of that. So the League of Women Voters this last week, the state league, sent out an email asking us all to contact our Congress people, our representatives, and let them know that we would like to be part of the hearings that the public would typically be part of, because public hearings will probably not happen in person this year. But there is no reason that they can't hurry up and do an override and say that they could have these meetings by via Zoom, or hold public hearings and then review the hearing at a later date, yada yada. A myriad of things are now possible, but they have to make it happen. So if you feel so inclined, reach out to our very amiable representatives and let them know that we would like to be part of the things that we would typically be part of but can't be because of the virus. So anyway, so here we are. It's 5 minutes till. Julie, you want to? Anyway.
It's 5 minutes till. I'm waiting for Stephanie. I could,
okay, to pop on.
I'm watching the clock too. Thanks.
Okay. All right.
I'm gonna text her as we get a little bit closer. We do have the chair of the Lead and Water Study Committee on us. See Sally, okay, if she needs to give an update on anything.
All right. And just a reminder, if you are not speaking, please mute yourself so that we don't get background noise. I know I'm having a bit of stuff done here, so I will do the same. All right. Yeah, Sally, would you like to give a little bit of an update? You've got about 2 minutes.
Then we have Linda Snyder, who's been very instrumental in everything. So
I think that Julie covered it very well. I really don't have anything to add to what Julie has told you. Now, a more objective viewpoint might be coming from Linda. Linda has helped us by auditing and critiquing some of our rehearsals. So I'll let her say something if she has anything to say.
I don't have much to add either, other than we are still continuing to practice, and we're trying to improve what we call the blue bubble, the PowerPoint presentation, and we are Still waiting to hear if we're going to be sent the 78415 or the specific zip codes in our area. We're still waiting to get information about that, but we are still actively pursuing it. That's about all I could add.
Okay, that committee's done a great job, which is a testament to our league strength as well as all the other people I've noted today. We've been meeting some, and I went to one of the rehearsals. It was fantastic. That's why I'm excited for y'all to see this blue bubbles. But we're going to be posting the facts and issues, the consensus questions. Those are to be used for education and for discussion. So, you know, those are to preview. You just depending on what level you want facts, you can dig into them. So they'll be posted shortly. But, you know, they will be posted before the meeting. I can't tell you exactly when. We'll let you know, but they'll get up there as everything else has. And then the committee, what we want to do, and I think this is exciting. If anyone wants to join us, let me know. We're going to, when the new year starts, we're going to do outreach and call our members and invite them to join the rest of our meetings and just make sure everybody's doing okay. So of course the committee can do that, but if anybody wants to join in on the efforts, let us know. And I see Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, how are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm so glad to be with everyone and to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
I think we should be telling you that, and everybody's really ready to hear from you. Thank you so much. Everybody ready? I have the.
Yep, hang on. Just everybody else who is not speaking, please go ahead and mute yourselves now.
Okay, I have the distinct privilege of introducing Stephanie Swanson. Stephanie is the Texas Redistricting and Census Chair for the League. She was if you read the voter, you saw her bio, but I want to make sure that you know this. She was recently an awardee at the annual Making Democracy Work Dinner at our convention in April. She was awarded for her outstanding work in furthering the cause of voter rights and voter education in Texas. The League said that she was applauded for her energy and dedication to the League, notably for putting into action our position of supporting transparency in the redistricting process and support for a citizens redistricting committee. Her leadership on redistricting in Texas inspires all our members as we see what can be affected with intelligence, dedication, passion, and perseverance. So we are so lucky to have you here, Stephanie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Where did you find that? Because we never actually had the dinner, and so I just thought it went to the wayside.
That's on the League website. And
really?
Yes, and you work so hard, and I can already tell you're a very humble person. So I said, I want to shine a little more light on her.
Well, thank you for mentioning that and finding it. I didn't know they had it up there. Yeah, the dinner never happened because of COVID, obviously. And so Grace had mentioned, she's like, oh, we're going to honor you this year because you've done so much work. And I go, well, we should be honoring you, Grace, first of all. She's like, I can't give myself an award, though. So at any rate, yeah, thanks for having me. Okay, got my kids squared away for the next hour on their iPads, I hope. Sorry, those are the notifications coming in. Okay, so it's hard to figure out what to talk to you guys about because there's so much going on and it's pretty chaotic right now. Stuff is going on with the census, stuff is going on with the legislative session, stuff is going on with maps, and just and so I'm going to try to give you an update of the mess and try to organize it a little bit for you. But importantly, because the League at the national level, we have this huge program is what they want us to use the name for it. It's called the People Powered Fair Maps Program, not a campaign. Don't know why, but that was the messaging they asked us to pass down and use. So our People Powered Fair Maps program we have a lot of work and a lot of opportunities for everyone to get involved, and we are just getting a lot of that set up here in the state. And so I kind of wanted to give everyone here an idea of what some of those volunteer opportunities look like, because the more volunteers we get working on this effort, the more groundwork and the more organized we can be across the state, and the more effective we can be in the long run. So I wanted to go over what some of their ideas are for the People-Powered Fair Maps program. And then I also want to tell you what our league here in the state has in store for the upcoming legislative session and for the next round of redistricting, because that time is now upon us. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. And so you with the Fair Maps Texas Coalition. So let me make my, there we go, my screen bigger for you guys. Okay, so in the Fair Maps Texas Coalition, which the league helped put together back in 2017, we got together with Common Cause. And so what you see across the US is, in many states, is all, they have coalitions, redistricting coalitions being formed. Most of these groups are working on ballot initiatives. We can't do that here in Texas, but nonetheless, we still have a good, strong coalition in place. So we got together with Common Cause, because usually these groups are run, the coalitions are run by the league and Common Cause. So we got together back in 2017. A few months later, the ACLU joined on, the Texas Civil Rights Project, Clean Elections Texas. And so we have a lot of great groups and a lot of great energy, a lot of great ideas in the coalition. So we're very, very proud of it. So I want to give you kind of an idea of what's in store right now. So I want to start with the census, and then we'll work our way over to the legislative session, because the census, delivery of the census data to the state is going to impact what our legislative session looks like.
What can we expect under a mess?
Yeah, it's a mess. It's bad. So for the census, as you guys know, the field operations were delayed because of COVID. So usually that census timeline, they end field operations in July, and those field operations were technically supposed to still be going until the end of September, but there was a lot of arguing with the president's administration, the Census Bureau, and then our groups, voting rights groups, who got involved in litigation over it. And so what happened was, when the Census Bureau's efforts started back up here in Texas in mid-August, we had already a 60% completion rate. I don't want to say already, because 60% isn't that great. So we had a 60% completion rate in mid-August here in the state. Field operations started back up. And what I heard a lot of reports of from Census Bureau takers on the ground was that they went to something called proxy data too quickly. So what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to knock on people's door 3 times. First, they'd send you a bunch of mailers. They try to contact you by phone, I think, too. And then they actually send a person to your door to see if they can collect that census questionnaire in person. And they send people out. They're supposed to do it 3 times. On a third knock, if you're not home, then they go to your neighbor's house to collect that census data. So what we heard from people on the ground here in Texas was that they were told after the second knock, then they can go to the neighbor's house to collect that data. And when they collect proxy data, one of the big problems is they miss out on, the only information they can collect is a head count of how many people live there. And hopefully that's right. Hopefully your neighbor gets it right. There's no guarantee that they will, but we miss out on very important data on race, ethnicity, and all the other questions on the census. Yeah, they don't fill those out. So that's important for when we try to uphold the Voting Rights Act here in Texas, because we draw districts, what we call majority minority districts, to give people protected under the Voting Rights Act a fair chance to elect a candidate of their choice. So we need that racial and ethnicity data to draw fair districts. So as of right now, we filed a bunch of lawsuits. The league actually filed one to extend the timeline for that census data collection until the end of September. There was a lot of back and forth, and ultimately I think the census operations ended mid-September. We're watching to see what the accuracy of the census data looks like. As you know, we have a big stake in redistricting across the nation, and so we want to make sure that it's accurate. And so as of right now, the Trump administration, I'm sorry, it's the Census Bureau that has reported that there are anomalies, certain data anomalies that they found. And so a lot of people are already watching and they want more oversight into how that data is being processed and handled. So we'll continue to monitor that. Also, the Texas League filed an amicus brief in a lawsuit. So the ACLU is the group that actually filed the initial lawsuit against the president's memo that was trying to exclude undocumented immigrants. And so because Texas was one of the biggest, we stood to lose the most congressional representation. Not only that, we already had experienced enough problems trying to, do outreach in the state for the census because of the citizenship question. That's still something that we talk about today. People are still afraid of answering the census. We had a lot of groups all across the state telling people not to answer the census questionnaire because they were afraid of what would happen and if they were going to be kicked out of the country. And so we had enough. And I said, no, we have to get involved in this lawsuit. This is it. I'm done. So that's why we filed the amicus brief, and we supported, we were against the president's claim, the president's memo to exclude undocumented immigrants. There are a whole bunch of problems with that. How are they going to tell who is an undocumented immigrant? Where are they going to get the data from? But more importantly, as a league here in Texas, we want everyone in the state to be counted so we can get an accurate population. Importantly, we want everyone to have the same amount of representation because that's the way it has worked all the way back from when our founding fathers set up the Constitution. Everyone should be counted equally. Everyone should have equal representation. If you look in the Houston area, for example, I think 1 in 4 homes has an immigrant living there. And so the impact of not only the citizenship question, but the possibility of folks be included from representation there would have a huge impact on congressional representation there. You'd have some congressional districts that would have, I'm sure, 1 million+ people. Other ones would be a few 100,000. So we wanted to make sure that everyone has equal representation. That's why we filed that amicus brief. And so that case was heard before the Supreme Court just on November 30th. So we'll see what happens. But the Census Bureau right now, they're not going to have the census data ready to deliver to the president until January 20th. That's a rough estimate, but that's what has been reported. That could very well change. And so you're just going to have to watch it and play it by ear. But because of this, that has an impact on our timeline for when the census data is delivered to the state. And so everyone here who lives in Texas hopefully knows that we have a crazy legislative session, and that it's funny because when I go to national symposiums and I'm explaining the redistricting process down here, we start with, well, our legislator only meets once every other year. It's a wild west of legislators. That's what everyone says to me, at least. I'm like, oh, okay. So we meet once every other year. Not only that, we only meet for 5 months during the legislative session. So we have a very short window that we have to get our maps drawn. And the maps are drawn as regular legislation. And so that gives you an indicator of what the timeline needs to be for the census data. So just last week, the Texas Tribune had a great interview with the chairs of the redistricting committees. And they both said, that if that census data doesn't come in by April 15th, which is like the very last day that they can start moving legislation through the House, well, it's not technically the last day, but that's what they said that they were going to try to mark as the last day. April 15th. So if that census data doesn't come to us by April 15th, they're anticipating that the maps will be drawn in a special session. Not only that, but because of the way our state constitution is worded, it says that the maps have to be drawn in the first regular session after census data is delivered to the state. That means that we're in for a redraw in a special session, but also we'll be in for another redraw in 2023. So that's good news, bad news. You can take that both ways. So it's kind of still up in the air though, because if the data comes in before that April 15th deadline, then what can happen is both the House and Senate maps and congressional maps could be handled by the legislator. And if they gridlock, if they reach gridlock and have too many fights over the maps, then the state legislative maps can be passed to the backup commission. The backup commission consists of 5 people currently, and they're all Republicans right now. It's Lieutenant Governor, Speaker of the House, Attorney General, Land Commissioner, and the Comptroller. And so keep in mind though that legislators ultimately want to draw their own maps. And so that's why both chairs of the committee said that we'll probably take care of this during the special session, because they honestly want to draw their own maps and they don't want to have the backup commission do it for them. So we are in for a lot though. So I was at a meeting last week. I wasn't at a meeting. One of my colleagues was at a meeting last week where they said that Legislative Council is the nonpartisan body that drafts legislation. They're the lawyers basically to a certain extent for the legislator. And they said that right now, currently, the legislator has 2 shell bills filed for the maps because they have to have them in place and ready to go in case the census data comes in. And there's certain timelines that they have to meet in order to do that. So they have them filed right now, and they'll just have to amend those bills if the census data comes in. But what Ledge Council said is that they could start drawing the maps right now with something called the American Community Survey data. The American Community Survey data is that it's like a small representation of what the census is. So it's like a small sampling. And it's done periodically throughout a 10-year period. And so what Ledge Council said was they can start drawing the maps using that American Community Survey data. And so we are just gonna have to wait and see what happens, and we'll have to keep an eye on the process. And we'll talk about that a little more towards the end, because if that's one of the things I'm gonna propose is you guys help watch when the maps are drawn. Another thing I wanted to point out is that preclearance is now gone. So for those of you who don't know what preclearance is, preclearance was a provision of the Voting Rights Act. And it said that anyone, any jurisdiction that had a history of racial discrimination in the past had to have all of their election laws, any changes to their election laws and their new maps pre-approved by the Justice Department or a 3-judge panel, basically. So some sort of federal supervision, federal oversight for when states made changes to their election laws. In 2013, though, the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act and got rid of Section 5. And so because of that, we're now moving into the next round of redistricting without having to have our maps pre-cleared by the Justice Department or by a 3-judge panel. And that's going to have significant implications here in Texas. So for the past 10 years, we have been stuck in litigation over the maps that were drawn. Texas was the only state in the entire nation that did not gain pre-clearance of their maps in 2011. And those maps in 2011 were found to be intentionally discriminatory by the Supreme Court, actually. So last year, there was a case here in, it was filed in the district court in San Antonio. There is a provision in the Voting Rights Act still left around. It's called bail-in. And that means that if a state behaves badly enough that they could be put back under pre-clearance. So a federal district court was considering putting the state back under pre-clearance last year, specifically for the mistakes that were made in the 2011 round of redistricting. So we have a little bit of leverage because of that, because while the court did not put the state back under pre-clearance, they did say that you have to have a fair and open process during this next round of redistricting. And they gave the state a very stern warning that, you know, we'll be watching, this needs to go, you need to do a better job this time around, because there were a lot of mistakes made, in 2011, a lot of mistakes made in 2013 when they had to draw new maps. And so we're basically trying to avoid that from happening again. And so because of this, we've developed something called our Fair and Open campaign. And really quickly, I wanted to walk you through that. Actually, before I get ahead of myself, let me explain this really quick. It's 2 facts, and this is from Joaquin Gonzalez at the Texas Civil Rights Project. I think his mom might be on the call. I know she's a member of the league down there. I'm not sure she's here today though. At any rate, in every redistricting cycle in the last half century, Texas has been found to have intentionally discriminated against racial minorities or violated the Voting Rights Act. And so that's a really bad track record, and that's something that we have to keep in mind because it's important to keep our history in mind, so we know what mistakes to watch for going forward. And then this is just talking about the bail-in hearing and some of the judges' comments from that. So let me show you the Fair and Open campaign really quick. It's up on our website. So if you go to the Take Action tab, sorry, this is on the Fair Maps Texas website, not the league's website. This is a little different, so sorry. So under Take Action, you can go over to the Fair and Open campaign. Here we have just an explanation of what the judges' comments were. And then we've developed advocacy points. And so one of the things I'm gonna suggest to everyone on the call is that you try to provide testimony at the public input hearings, and I'll get into that in a second. But you know, from all the mistakes that they made in 2011, we don't wanna see those mistakes happen again. And we can be very vocal about it and be upfront about it with providing testimony, reaching out to legislators, watching when the maps are drawn. And these are some of the advocacy points that we have developed to let people, help people navigate that. So in 2011, I think it was 2013 actually, you know, they passed maps out of committee without showing the full committee. Republicans didn't show Democrats on the committee. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen again. So one of the advocacy points we've developed, we've been telling people, in your testimony, you can include, we want to have a public input hearing before the maps pass out of committee, because we, the people, want to be a part of the process. We want to have a chance to review the maps. We want to have a chance to give input and offer up alternative plans. And so from these past problems, let me go through some of the stuff that we've put forth. So we want them to provide a reasonable notice of hearings. We want to hold a fair and open process. So that means hold a public hearing with public testimony on any proposed maps after they've been drawn but before they pass out of committee. Provide adequate time for alternative views. We don't want to see racial gerrymandering. We also don't want to see partisan gerrymandering, because that's one of the state league's positions, is we prefer a nonpartisan process. We don't want to see conflicts of interest. So that means we'd prefer if politicians weren't drawing their own maps, but we all know that that's going to happen this time around. We want them to hold on to their evidence. And this advocacy point comes from a state conference that ALEC had, Advocacy American Legislative Exchange Council. It's a very conservative group. They used to represent the business community, but now it's turned into something a little bit more right-wing and not really too much aligned with business anymore. At any rate, they had a redistricting panel, and our chair of our House redistricting, Phil King, was on that panel because he's a former chairman of ALEC. So they were telling people at the end of the day, you know, litigation is bound to happen because, like we said, for the past 50 years, we've been in court arguing over maps. And so they were literally telling people at the end of the day, you delete your emails and basically destroy the evidence, which was just shocking. Any legislator shouldn't do that. That's just reprehensible to me. So at any rate, one of our advocacy points was don't hide or destroy evidence, which again, it's sickening that we actually have to say something like that. And then explain your work. We want to see an explanation for why the lines were drawn the way that they were. And because we have a lot of stuff happening around that. So the state is supposed to be holding public input hearings, and they hold it during the interim because our legislative session is so short. And one of the reasons that they hold these hearings is because they've been in, the state's been in so much trouble in the courts with the Voting Rights Act that this is something that the judges want to see. Did you try to include the public in the map making process? And so, like I said, because our legislative session is so short and because we meet every other year, they tend to hold these public input hearings during the interim session. And so we advocated the Fair Maps Texas Coalition, and we pushed hard against the House Redistricting Committee and the Senate. We used the federal courts and the judges' remarks from the bail-in ruling to get some leverage on them because they were already repeating the same mistakes that we saw in 2011. They had decided to hold public input hearings in basically the same small town locations. They weren't developing any sort of public outreach campaign. You know, they were already lining themselves up to make the same mistakes, and it was right in the middle of that bail-in hearing. So we took some of the judges' comments and said, you know, I actually took it to the press and got a story in the press with Ashley Lopez at KUT. And I said, look, they're already repeating the same mistakes. We want them to do better. You have to do better. And so sure enough, because of that and because of our efforts, they decided to double the number of public input hearings that they were going to hold around the state, which was great. That meant that our major cities and major metroplex areas that had most of the growth were going to get multiple hearings, which is what we wanted to see. So that was great, but then COVID struck. So the House committee had held, I think, 13 hearings around the state. The Senate, however, had not held a single public input hearing. And it's a little unusual because the House and Senate draw their own maps, and because they file separate legislation, they have to hold separate public input hearings, which just seems not well planned out. But that, nonetheless, they still have to hold them, and they have not held any right now. So again, the Fair Maps Texas Coalition wrote a series of letters over the past year saying you need to continue these public input hearings. Not only that, but when they continue, you need to do so in a virtual format because we want to protect the health and well-being of not only Texas citizens, but also Texas legislators as well. So just this past few weeks, we sent another round of letters. And again, we threatened with the judge's comments for bail-in, because it's clear that they've wasted time. They haven't had any more public input hearings. And now there's a real chance that they might not allow virtual testimony to be heard in the upcoming session. And so with all of this and with all of the timing, we got a coalition together and we sent another round of letters to the House and Senate redistricting chairs and also to the House and Senate leadership. And we laid it out for them. We said, you guys have wasted time. You need to have these public input hearings. You need to do so in a virtual format. And then we used the judge's comments from the bail-in hearing. And within a few days, the chair of the Senate Redistricting Committee wrote back and said that it's Joan Huffman from the Houston area. She was very nice, and she wrote a nice letter back and said that she is going to introduce a resolution on the first day of the legislative session or towards the beginning of the legislative session that would allow the redistricting committee to accept virtual testimony. But that also means that the Senate probably will not allow virtual testimony for the other committees or the rest of the Senate. And there is no guarantee that the Senate will choose to uphold that. And so again, it's just a mess, and we're watching and waiting. Thankfully, though, we still have the threat of bail-in hanging over their heads. And it's interesting that she decided to do this, and she's decided to publicly state her support for these public input hearings and for the virtual testimony. And she basically almost passed the responsibility for if anything goes wrong, she's passing it over to the lieutenant governor because he's the one at the end of the day that's going to make the call and be responsible for what happens. And they're trying to get out of being deposed, we think. Nonetheless, though, it was a good sign. Like we made a good improvement, a tangible improvement, at least we tried to, in the redistricting process without having any sort of legislation involved. So we're trying to right now, let me go back. The Fairmount Texas Coalition, because we've lost so much time during the interim for these public input hearings, we have started holding our own virtual public input hearings, because if they're not going to do it, we can do it for them, and we can do it in a virtual format, no problem. What we've done is we've had folks come and provide testimony, and then we just make a transcript, and then we give people a copy of the transcript to have them submit directly to the House and Senate redistricting committees for their consideration. So we are going to be having 2 more of these virtual public input hearings the first week of January. This past one that we had on December 10th, we had a spotlight on the South Texas region. And I think we had a few people from Corpus who actually provided testimony, which was great. I know Tim Dowling was one. I think the Democratic chair of the county, Coretta Graham, I think was her name, showed up. And then there were 2 other folks, one from the Rio Grande Valley and two from the Rio Grande Valley. So if anyone else was interested, if you haven't already provided testimony to the House and Senate redistricting committees, because I know that they had a hearing last year there. If you haven't already, one thing to keep in mind is that that hearing last year was only for the House. So we strongly urge you to submit that written testimony to the Senate as well. And I can send you the info for how to do that, no problem. I need to get it up on the website too. But keep that in mind. And if anybody hasn't done so already and you would like to give it a try, we're having 2 more virtual hearings next week. I'm sorry, the first week of January. Okay, let me go back really quick, because from here on out, I just wanted to talk about action items and ideas to see if people would be interested. So we're talking about the public input hearings right now. We've already talked about the Fair and Open campaign, which is the advocacy points, the testimony guides. Let me go back really quick to the testimony guides. I want to show you where that's at, because people are not quite familiar with what should be included in your testimony. And so the whole point of these public input hearings is to get input from the public on where their communities are, literally like where the geographic line for their neighborhood is. The whole point of doing this is to provide context to the census data. And so what you want to do is come out and tell the committee, this is my neighborhood. This is this next neighborhood over here. We have a lot of similarity. We work together on a lot of issues. We share the same resources, so we'd like to be kept together. And so that's what we call a community of interest. And right now, the legislator does a horrible job of keeping communities of interest together because of partisan gerrymandering. With partisan gerrymandering, they go block by block and choose their voters. And I can't tell you how many times and how many talks I've given across the state where I ask the audience, how many people in here live in one of those crazy House or Senate districts where your neighbor across the street from you is in a different district? Usually on average, at least 2 people in the audience raise their hands. And so when they separate you from your neighbor, that prevents you from getting together to advocate for shared needs and shared resources. And that's something that we want to try to prevent. Definitely that's the League's top priority, is communities of interest. So I have on the website and on the League's website as well, a whole bunch of different ideas to help you guys come up with ideas for communities of interest and what you can include in your testimony. So any area that has a shared culture or history, transportation corridors that you might have in common weather. I know down in Corpus, you guys are especially concerned with hurricanes and also with insurance problems as well from all of the hurricanes that you've had to deal with over the past 10 years. Watershed, economical regions, it's another really good one. I know in Corpus, you guys also have a huge port there, so you have that. And then you also have a university in town as well, I believe, right? That's really big. Recreational areas is another one. Housing, language, languages spoken, schools, healthcare, or you might have common goals. Other areas, if you guys are more politically active, if you're working on various political issues, so if you're working on stuff like housing issues, housing affordability, redlining, dealing with problems from segregation over the past 50 years that are still lingering, access to loans, I'm trying to think of other stuff, school equity problems. It could be unions as well, if you're a member of a union or a workers' rights group. Other stuff that's more politically active, you can also come out and include that in your testimony as well. So what you really want to do in your testimony is explain why your community should be kept together, where your community is located, and then there's a nice example testimony. I wish I could say I wrote it, but I didn't. This is actually from California. But anyways, nonetheless, it's a really good example testimony of, testimony on a community of interest. And then Joaquin with the Texas Civil Rights Project has also put together a testimony guide, and this highlights more of the Fair and Open campaign. And we have a bunch of recommendations, like we were with all of the past problems that we saw, the changes that need to be made so we don't see those problems occur again. So his testimony guide is also up on the website. He also has these 5 recommendations and an explanation of why they're important, but then also he gives you a few different example testimonies that you can pull from. Okay, so I showed you the testimony, guys. Let me go back to the other presentation. Importantly, though, we want to watch when the new maps are drawn. I know we have a new national president, but Chris Carson actually wrote a speech a long time ago for me to use at one of these events that I was speaking at. And when she wrote it, it just, everything came into focus. It was just great. I was like, wow, that's why she's the president of the National League. But I want to let you guys know what her thoughts were, because it was a really good quote. And it kind of lays out what sort of work we need to be doing as League members. There's a whole component of citizen education dealing with transparency and public engagement that is absolutely vital to any redistricting system. People need to understand what the current redistricting process is, why it is so bad, and what could be done about it in clear, simple terms. We need good materials in all formats and good speakers to share that material. We need volunteers who represent our diversity to help us inform our communities. We need to focus on creating a more transparent process. We need people to watch when the new maps are drawn to guard against gerrymandering. Sunlight disinfects. If the line drawers aren't doing anything funny, then there's no reason to go behind closed doors. The public needs to see and understand who's drawing the maps and how they are drawn. So this is great, right? Everything that we need to be doing is included right there. So, and that's some of the action items. Most of the action items that I'm telling you about today is from this quote. So, we want to watch when the new maps are drawn. And that's a really big part of what this upcoming legislative session is going to be about. We want people to watch the committee very closely to make sure that if they do present maps, that we have people there who can review the maps and say, no, wait, you're splitting up my neighborhood with this line over here and it needs to be changed. So we need folks to help with that. We also need folks to participate in those public input hearings, so we make sure that we get maps that reflect our communities. So that's another big part of the puzzle that we're looking for help with. We're also looking for stakeholders from the community to provide testimony. And I know I've spoken with Julie a few times about reaching out to community leaders there who know the community that could provide that public testimony that we're looking for. That's another idea to work on. And that's more of like a traditional organizing outreach type job, and it's very difficult to do. Not that I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but I understand that it's hard to do. So the National League, though, is definitely looking, we're supposed to be setting up a speakers bureau here in the state. And so they've given us a template PowerPoint presentation for all state leagues to use and to adopt to their state. And so if you would be interested in being a speaker for the Speakers Bureau, you can reach out to me. Currently, we have 3 people who don't really know that they're in it yet. They've given presentations before though for Fair Maps, and they're all league members. So I'm recruiting them. But we're trying to figure out ways of getting this presentation out to local communities, because we do a really good job of presenting to ourselves and presenting to like-minded groups, but we want to come up with new ways that we can do outreach to, you know, other folks in the community that might not be so engaged as we are. So that's what that Speakers Bureau is going to be doing. So if you have any interest in either being a speaker, helping tailor the presentation to be more specific for Texas or to your region, or even if you just want to work on helping us figure out how to do this outreach to the community, that this would be a great group for you guys to get involved in. We also are going to be working on making maps, which is a lot of work to do, but we're going to try. We have a pretty decent group in Corpus with Fair Maps. So if anyone wants to work on making maps, right now is the time that we're just getting these efforts started. So again, you can just shoot me an email, and I'll leave my email address at the end of the presentation so everyone can get in contact. Making maps can be something as simple as drawing your community of interest on a map. So I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. I don't want you to think, oh, this is going to be too difficult. I don't want to make a huge district map for the entire state. And that's not the idea behind it. What we want folks doing is drawing their own community of interest on a map. Common Cause is one of our partners, and they are going to be having their own effort here in the state. So we're partnering with them for sure, but they're going to be hosting, I think, more in-person events, but outside socially distanced. The whole point is to get folks together in a community and try to identify just common points. Like, this is our shared park. This is a really important line of transportation that we use, and try to map out that community of interest kind of more in a group setting. And then the whole point is to then take that map and actually use a mapping software to outline it and then deliver that to the legislator. So we'll be making announcements about that once they get that project underway, and definitely Fair Maps will be promoting it, because we'll try to get this set up in as many communities as possible around the state. And then if you're more interested in doing like serious map making, Fair Maps also will be trying to do some more serious maps. What I have found, it's very difficult for people to comment and give testimony on their community of interest. And this is from just my experience over the past year and a half watching the public input hearings we've already had. There was some really good data on communities of interest, but what people were very good at was complaining about the current maps. And so once you have a map in hand, you can say no, yes, like this plan would not be good for my community, or no, this is great. And so that's what we want to do to help people be able to articulate their ideas more. And that puts us ahead in the long run as well, because really at the end of the day, you need that map to be able to advocate more clearly at the legislator. So that's another project that the Fair Maps Texas Coalition is going to be working on over the next month or two. Daphne Spretzer with the Como Area League hopefully is going to be helping with the advocacy group. And her and another member from the El Paso League still want to work on legislation. To be honest with you, I'm probably going to be focused mainly on maps. We are definitely getting filed legislation filed for the upcoming session for an independent redistricting commission. And we're going to be fighting and supporting that as much as possible. But to be honest with you, because redistricting is happening right now, it's very, very doubtful that either committee, either the House or Senate committee, will actually listen to redistricting legislation during the upcoming session. And so because of that, just being realistic, neither party or neither chamber will likely review that legislation. And so I don't really have a huge priority on it, but I know that there are league members that do want to help with that still. So if you would like to, you know, figure out ways to work on messaging for that redistricting legislation, or meet with your legislator. I know that a lot of the local leagues were setting up interviews, legislative interviews with Janet Imhoff and the advocacy team. And so just stuff like that, that's what the advocacy group is going to be focusing on. And then the last idea I have is for local resolutions. This is something that we worked on in the last legislative session that were very effective. We actually got El Paso County and El Paso City Council, Dallas County, and Austin City Council to pass local resolutions. And these resolutions were just a way for that local jurisdiction to say, we want the state to pass redistricting reform in some shape or form. And our resolution that we submitted to them for their consideration was for an independent redistricting commission. And so that was really effective though at getting press, and that's really effective at getting the message out to the broader community that there are people working on redistricting reform in the state. To be honest with you though, you're gonna have to look at the makeup of your local jurisdiction that you're trying to get this resolution passed in. Unfortunately, there aren't many Republicans right now that support redistricting reform. I'll get to one in just a second though. But because of that, you kind of have to look at the partisan makeup. So if you know that, and then I know a lot of city councils are nonpartisan, but you can kind of tell one way or the other. So if you look at your city council and they're more progressive leaning, then that would be a great place to maybe consider passing a local resolution. Your county commissioners, I think, also run on a partisan ticket as well. So if your county commissioners court is more on the progressive side, then they might be more likely to support stuff like this. However, because we are in Corpus, you guys are a very unusual city. You've had two legislators in the past who are Democrats switched to the Republican Party, which tells me that there's like a lot of moderate folks down there. So it might be something worth looking at. We were actually speaking with Representative Todd Hunter recently over the past month. There was an attorney from the area that reached out to us that knows him, and he said that Representative Hunter was actually supportive of redistricting reform. He said it'd be great to get the process out of legislators' hands. But we're trying to convince him to be more public about it and actually support legislation, and that seems to be the stopping point. So, and keep that in mind for the lobbying group. So if anyone is a constituent of Representative Hunter, that would also be something good to talk with him about. And the very last thing I wanted to let you guys know about was a call to action up on the league's front page of their website, if I can find it really quick. Now I have all of here it is. News articles open. Okay, so front page of the league's website, we have a call to action. So scroll down, it's this first one right here, allow Texans to testify remotely. So this one is going to be very important for you guys if you're a constituent of Representative Hunter, because he is on the House Rules Subcommittee for determining how the legislature is going to operate during the upcoming session. If they're going to allow for virtual testimony, he's in charge of doing safety measures and stuff like that as well, I think. So this would be a great call to action for you guys to fill out, and hopefully Grace has set it up so it goes to the House. I'll make sure that it is set up properly so it does go to the House as well as the Senate. So yeah, that's the last call to action that we had up for, or that's the last part of the presentation I say that I wanted to tell you guys about. So I know I've dumped a lot out over the past 45 minutes. I wanted to see though if there was anything that I had mentioned that anyone was interested in. If you guys have any subcommittees that you're forming that do work on any of this type of work, yeah, I wanted to get you plugged in case anyone is interested. If no one's interested, it's not a big deal. But if you are interested, it'd be great to kind of put some plans, get some plans going on the call today and take those first steps.
Hi, Stephanie.
Stephanie, I was wondering about the Speakers Bureau. Will it be a bilingual speakers bureau? Are we going out into Spanish speaking communities, and do we need Spanish speaking folks for our speakers bureau?
Be great if we could do it in both. I know for our testimony guides, we had both of them transcribed or put into a Spanish format. But we don't have that ability right now with the current folks that we have. So if there's anyone here that's interested in doing that and helping put that together, that would be amazing.
Okay,
Stephanie?
that's good. We might have some people, I think. I'll check on that, and I'm interested in the local resolutions and the Fair Maps Texas making our own maps.
Okay.
Stephanie, can you hear me?
How's everybody else doing? This is a call to action. What do you say? That's great information. Sometimes that's the hardest thing, is to find something to do.
We've got too much to do, and it's hard to pare it down to make it simple. So too much to do.
Can I be heard? This is Anel. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, it's kind of low.
Okay, I'll turn my sound up. But there you go. Stephanie, if you would take down your PowerPoint, we can put that would get everybody back up on the screen, and might be a little more participatory. There you go. Will we be able, the PowerPoint you have is so lovely. Is that available on the Texas website or anyone else?
I pulled a bunch of information from the website because most of this info is up on the website. And so the 3 slides that I showed you at the beginning, I can show you, and I'll try to put some more of this information into the PowerPoint to send to you guys. So it's all in one place. Because I pulled a bunch of different sources. So I'll try to do that and send it to you.
Okay, and I noticed in the chat that Debbie Noble says she has added the action call to our Facebook page.
Great.
So you should be able, she is so awesome about getting things posted. And this meeting will be posted this afternoon. It takes a couple of hours for everything to download and upload and do all the loading, so it will probably be late afternoon, but it should be. And then once I get my part done, Debbie has to do her part. So it's all availability and timing. So, but it will be posted, and so all of the information that Stephanie gave us today will be available if you want to go back and look at the meeting. Anybody else?
Peggy, go ahead. Unmute yourself and.
Yeah, I just put a question up. Stephanie, this was really good. I'd like you to get on the record also of giving us some specific examples of how gerrymandered districts are currently affecting citizens to the negative in their daily lives, like the way that we have mixed our urban and rural districts, or what happened? What are the negative results of having things gerrymandered, basically?
And so I didn't do the usual redistricting presentation that I go through because I had recently given that last on the December 4th. And so because I thought many of you guys might have attended that, we thought it would be better just to focus more on the call to action part and give you a quick update. So with the regular presentation I give, I do talk a little bit about that and the negative impacts of it. But that's something that the Fair Maps Texas Coalition is really trying to work diligently on, because it's very difficult to make an elevator pitch even to other community groups on why they should get involved in redistricting, especially when the new maps are drawn. Even I spoke with actually yesterday the former past president of the NAACP at the national level.
Oh, well, I just got a different call from Dr. Mahmood. Are they in the same practice?
I'm sorry?
Oh.
No.
I think somebody just needs to unmute.
Yes,
or mute.
yeah, someone is off of mute and they should be. Stephanie, would you be able to put the link to your December 4th presentation into the PowerPoint you're going to send down to us?
Yes, but what I was saying was that that past president was also voicing the same concerns. And she's looking more broadly over the past 15 years to see, you know, what happened, where things went wrong. And I think she was referring, obviously, to what's happened at the national level, because that's where she is as well. At any rate, she was saying the same thing because she's working on redistricting in Fort Worth. And she's saying it's very difficult to come up with that messaging and to let people understand or make people understand why redistricting is so important. And so that one presentation I give, you know, I try to walk you through the ups and downs of redistricting and why it's so important for other people to be involved. But, you know, redistricting goes all the way back to the Voting Rights Act, right? That's where a lot of the history of it comes. And so in order to do it justice, you really have to explain to folks the importance of the Voting Rights Act and how with the adoption of the Voting Rights Act, people of color were finally allowed to elect a candidate of their choice. And this really does have an impact on us on a day-to-day basis. And I go through in my other presentation, I have a slide up that I show folks. This is the problems when you draw safe districts. It leads to party polarization, and then you get very odd topics coming up in the legislature, like the bathroom bill and the anti-immigration show your papers bill from the 2017 legislative session. And because they have such a control over the legislator, and because their seats are safe, you can't vote these people out of office. You get more radical candidates that run, and then they come up with a more radical policy agenda for the legislative session. Not only that, but if you want to vote them out of office, you have to go to the primary to do so because their seats are safe. You also have a problem, it's an incumbent protection plan, right? Gerrymandering is an incumbent protection plan. So you have the same people running because their seat is safe. And when you have the same people running over and over again, people don't want to show up to vote. So it just, because they know who's going to win the election. So it just causes a lot of problems. But coming up with like a short pitch to folks, it's very complicated. And that's something that I'm specifically more interested in for the upcoming few months, because we're really desperately trying very hard to get the right people out to provide testimony at these hearings, right? We really want to do our best to protect people of color and make sure that they get their testimony in to the legislators so we can try to protect neighborhoods all across the state, basically.
I speak. I think what we need to have in our state are term limits for all state officers. And I know I say that with a lot of risk on my part, but if we had a continuous change of those who represent us in government, I think they would look more towards the community as a whole than for special interests. We need to put term limits for our representatives and senators and our state leaders, including the governor, all the way down. We need to have basic fundamental change in our government. The problem lies in our Constitution that was written in the 1870s for an agrarian society. We're past that. We need to update and bring our Constitution up to this century, not the 20th century, but the 21st century. And that's what we need to do. And we need to elect men and women. And I say we need to elect more women into office who will make those changes possible. Because women, I think more broadly than men. I don't want to say that I'm an exception, but you know, I favor having more women in government because we can accomplish more through having you in there. We need to have a legislature that meets every year. We need a longer term for the legislature so that they can get things done without pressure being applied on them. Those are long-term things, I know, and probably won't happen next week or next year or this coming decade, but those are goals that we should look at to have better representation for the people as a whole.
And so many of the groups in the Fairmount Texas Coalition, you know, we were hoping that Democrats would win the House because that would mean we'd have more of a bipartisan map that came out, right? We're not partisan in that, but that was just, we don't want one party in control of the map making process. But since that didn't happen, we're almost guaranteed to have maps that are going to reflect a conservative agenda now for the next 10 years. And so in terms of redistricting reform, we're now looking at more of that 10-year projection of when we could possibly see redistricting reform get passed or established here in Texas. And that's just being truthful. So, yeah.
All right. I think we've got an amazing amount of information, and it's hard to do when there's a mess that we're in, but there's light at the end of that messy tunnel, and we're going to get to that light if we all do it together. It's not going to happen naturally. I think everybody's got a feel for that. We're going to have to do some action. So I really recommended to Stephanie that she's able to give us some things that we can do. If you just did one thing, if each of us do one thing, it's going to make a difference. And you see everybody on this call and everywhere is so busy right now. And Stephanie took the time out. And so I'm just going to put it out there one more time. We're not going to all be together till next year. The session is going to start soon. This is work we have to do right now. And we're not going to have Stephanie again for a while because she's so busy and she got to get to the kids here in a minute. So can anybody respond to any call of action? Is there anything there that you can do? And she'll take your name and get back with you, or I will, just while we have each other, because these moments don't come often.
Well, I've been tuning into the Zooms, so I'm kind of like trying to figure out what I can do next, but I've been tuning into I was on that December 4th Zoom, so.
That was helpful.
So if you could provide, if anyone could provide testimony, that would be very helpful. That was kind of what the Zoom was helping people with is, this is what the testimony should look like. So you don't have to present verbal testimony, but even if you could write a paragraph to send in, it would be very helpful.
Okay.
That's good. And she showed us where all the tools are. So we've got help there. I think what helps when you're in a mess is and trying to get out of it, it's knowing if somebody feels like they're gonna do some research and do a public testimony, it'll help Stephanie be able to assess where we are here in South Texas.
Yeah, for sure.
And I would like to add again that the action alerts on the League of Women Voters Texas, that everybody sign up for those. I thought I was signed up, but I didn't get this last one on the redistricting, asking for them to include the public on drawing the maps. So we'll definitely get back to the website. But thank you for bringing that out again.
You can go to the Texas League's website to see the action alerts anytime you want. Like if you miss it on your phone, you don't see it somewhere, they're on their website, and they also show up on our website. Our website subscribes to theirs, so they pop up on the action alerts on our local website too.
I don't think they actually sent out a text message about this one, about this last one that we put out. And so we just got new software and we were trying that out. Grace and the State League seemed to like it. But at any rate, it's there on the front page of the website. And it's not just for the redistricting committee, it's for the entire legislature. Because right now it looks like the leadership is not going to allow for virtual hearings to occur, which is just very concerning because we want people to be a part of the legislative process. So your State House representative is part of that working group, though, that's going to determine the rules, which is why it's important for you guys to take action on it, because you're his constituent. So your voice is weighted more. So if you could take the time to fill it out, it'd be very appreciated.
I would be interested in local maps or map making if anybody else is.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that as well. And also in the Spanish speaking council.
Okay, I'll follow up with an email to you guys, and I'll try to put some more of this information that was on the website. I'll link to it and let you guys know where you can find it. Okay. All right. Well, thanks you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Stephanie, your contact information, please.
Oh, yes, that would be great. Let me put it in the chat box. But it is steph.swanson.lwvtx, League of Women Voters Texas, @gmail.com. I think that went to Sally. Hold on just 1 second. Sorry. Let me send it out to everyone.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, .com, not .org.
No. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, all members. It was really nice to see you all. Have a happy holidays.
Yes, indeed.
You too. Thanks.
For a program.
Okay, so Raul and Paula, you guys are staying on, and I think Catherine expressed an interest in staying on. I'm going to stop the recording.